Hi everyone, my name is Rick Weisbord. I'm the faculty here at the Graduate School of Education, the Kenny School of Government. I'm the faculty director of the Making Caring Common project, and I am delighted that you have joined us. And I am delighted to welcome Shelley Jackson, who is going to be leading us in a training on the most important work I think we can do at this moment, which is to vote and to mobilize other people to vote, our friends, our family to vote in this absolutely critical existential election, which is going to have a huge impact on our future and on just about all the issues that we care about, I think at the local level and at the national level as well. Shelley is a very experienced and skilled trainer, and I haven't known her long, but I know her just to be a lovely and thoughtful person, so I feel very lucky to have her here. She is going to introduce herself, but she has done a lot of a lot of training in Arizona. She's a South Phoenix native, and her work is centered at the intersection of electoral youth organizing with a strong lens of racial justice and a passion for empowering others to step into their power to create meaningful change in their communities. And it is wonderful to welcome you, Shelley, and I will hand it off to you.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Harvard series of Get Out the Vote. And I'm excited to engage with all of you today. This is a voter mobilization training specifically for young people. We're going to dive into many different things. But before I even get into that, I do want to introduce myself a little bit more. My name is Shelley Jackson again. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the Deputy Director of Training and Engagement at Instituto. Instituto is an organization based out of Arizona with the mission of building sustained political power for low-income communities and communities of color here in Arizona. As Richard said, I am an organizer. I have been organizing in Arizona for a few years now on many different issues, ranging from voting rights to tackling voter suppression, to expanding public transportation, empowering young people to get civically involved, and even more. So I'm super excited to be here with you all today. Aside from being an organizer, I am an artist, I'm a poet and a dancer, and I feel like I always have to name that because it shows up in the way that I train, it shows up in the way that I move throughout spaces and the way I show up for my community. I'm hoping to engage with you all outside of this. So if after this training you want to connect, I am on Twitter as Shelley Your Local, without the O and the U because, you know, Twitter and characters. And then I'm on Instagram as Shelley Your Local, all the way spelled out. Remember that that is Shelley with an EY. That is something that people forget all the time when trying to reach out. So again, I'm excited to engage with you all and hopefully can engage with you beyond this training as well. Also, before we get started, if you want to drop in the chat your name, where you are from, and maybe your age too. I would love to know who's in the space. I can't see you, but I would love to know who you are. So if you can drop that in the chat. I have my chat up. Oh, hey, AK. I see some chats already coming in, but I see 18 years old from Virginia, 25 from AZ in the house repping. California, Minnesota, wow, Nevada. Oh, it's lit in here, y'all. New York City, Hawaii, Ohio, Georgia. Oh, we're gonna have so much fun. There's so many different perspectives here. If you see me looking this way, I'm not ignoring you. I have my chat up here and I wanna make sure that I can continue engaging with you all throughout the entire time. So, our learning objectives for today, we are going to identify the significance and the power of the youth vote and the barriers that also come with voting while young. We're going to take some time to discuss this current moment in time and what it means for our communities. In addition, we are going to identify our personal stakes in this election. And then towards the end, we're going to talk about identifying what's in our persuasion toolbox and talk about how we can persuade our family and friends to vote, and then also developing a plan to get out the vote. I also see some names are still coming in. Keep it coming. Aaron from Texas, Karina from Vermont. I'm excited to engage. All right, so how are we gonna get to these learning objectives that I just talked about? Well, right now we're doing our introduction and goals. So, hey, then we'll go into our moment in time and our personal stakes. Then we'll talk about the significance of voting while young. We'll dive into our persuasion toolbox. And then lastly, we'll make our plan to vote. Now, before we keep going, I have one norm, actually two. The other one's not on here. But the first one for a norm and agreement is I need you all to stay engaged. The chat is popping right now. I need it to stay popping. Let's continue talking. Let's continue engaging, not only with myself, but other folks who are in this space with us, this virtual space. I ask that you be respectful. We are all here to learn together. I'm excited to also learn from you. The second thing I want you to keep in mind is that this is a nonpartisan training. What does that mean? That means I am not here to tell you who to vote for. I'm here to tell you how you can vote and how you can use your voice. And so we won't be encouraging each other to vote for specific candidates or people while in this training, but we will be able to talk about aligning our values with our votes and recognizing and reflecting on what this time means for us. This training is a webinar. So again, I cannot see your beautiful faces, but this is not a lecture. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is that you all keep this chat going. But that's the only norm and agreement that I have for today, and I am ready to go. So my first question for all of you is, what are you excited to learn about today? Go ahead and drop that in the chat. What are you excited to learn about today in this hour and a half that we have together? Kayla says how to vote. Okay, we're learning about voting, voting in general. All of y'all are like, look, I'm just here to figure out how to vote, okay? How to encourage people how to vote, how people are hindered from voting. I feel that one. How important my vote is, how to stay encouraged, looking at our personal stakes, and making an action plan to vote. These are all such great reasons to be here. Learning more about the process, love it. Success strategies for breaking the perception barrier around young people, amazing. How voting works, the impact of voting. Thank you all so much for taking a moment to let me know what you're excited about. The good thing is that we are covering a lot of these things in this training today. And at the end, we will have time for some Q&A. So if there's anything that I didn't cover that you would like more information on, I got you at the end. All right, we are gonna get started talking about this moment in time. I want you to take a second to reflect on what does this moment in time look like collectively? When I say collectively, I'm thinking about our country. So what does our country look like right now? This can be a feeling, this can be a picture. What does this moment in time look like for our communities? When I think of community, I think of a physical community, so where maybe you live. Maybe a community that is built based off of interest, right? So I'm a dancer, so I also have a dance community. That community faces specific challenges. Maybe you're thinking about what this time looks like collectively in terms of your identity. What does this look like as a Black person? What does this look like as women right now? I see in the chat that polarized, very divided and intense, unknown, stressful, tense, confusing. Maddie says something that will be written in history books. Wow, so powerful. Something that will be written in history books. I see also in the comments, fragile. A lot is at stake. A loss of faith in institutions. Amelia says for women, this time can be scary. Divided through chaos and scared for the future. Nervous for human rights, uncertainty. I want to take a moment to hold all of that and recognize that everything that you are feeling right now, everything that you see, you hear in this collective time is valid. And it's important that we recognize this as we are thinking about how we engage other folks, as we are thinking about how we engage in the process ourselves. For me, when I think about this time collectively, I think of a lot of the things that you all have here, right? A lot of those feelings. When I think about what this looks like, I'm thinking of the pandemic that we're all living in. I know some people think it's gone, it's not gone. We're still living in a global pandemic with COVID-19. I'm thinking about the uprisings that have been happening all over the country since March and the killing of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. I am thinking of the grief that we are holding as communities, whether you know someone or know someone who's known someone who has lost their life due to COVID, to police brutality or anything else. I'm thinking of how a lot of people in our country right now are struggling through unemployment or financial insecurity. And then also being here in Arizona, we're really close to Oregon, we're really close to California, who are experiencing major fires right now. And so I'm thinking of the climate crisis and how prominent that is in my state and the states surrounding me and all over the country. And just like you, I'm thinking of all of these feelings that you have here in the chat. Division, maybe feeling a little hopeless sometimes, worried, divided, uncertain. There's a lot at stake, and we'll get to that in a second. But I think it is always important for us to make sure that we are recognizing how our communities are probably showing up and what they are dealing with right now collectively. Now, what does this moment in time look like for you personally? So we dived in a little bit, we've dove in a little bit to talk about what does this look like collectively, but what does this moment in time look like for you personally? I see chaotic, overwhelming. I know my life is definitely chaotic right now too. Scary, beautiful, frustrating, empowering. Oh, so many different feelings, right? So many different ways that we are showing up right now. Numbing, busy AF. I feel that one too. A little scary, stressful. Absolutely. Again, it is so important that we take time to acknowledge how we show up collectively and then how that relates to how we are showing up personally too. Acknowledging and reflecting on what specific moments mean to us help us provide more introspection to what we are feeling and how we move those feelings to action. And I want to emphasize this last part, how we move those feelings to action. We do a lot of talking, we do a lot of reflecting a lot of the time in our everyday life, but a lot of the times we also get immobilized. We don't know how to move from that. And so I'm hoping that here today, as we continue reflecting and talking about what this moment means for us and how that shows up in voting, that by the end of this, we feel moved to do something, or we feel even more moved to get our friends and our family involved, pushing through all of the grief that we are experiencing right now and more. Some people in the chat already begin to talk about this, but we're going to get into our personal stakes and what this means for our elections. The bottom line, oh, and I just got a notification that my, so you can hear me and see me okay. You can just put open in the chat to make sure that I'm good. Can you hear me now? All right. I'm starting to see the ones come in. They don't want to see us win, y'all. That's why. Okay, I'm getting my ones in. If you're like, for sure, like, Shelley, I hear you, I got you, go ahead and drop the deuces in the chat, just so I can make sure that we're all on the same page. Can you drop a 2? Okay, we're back and better. That's okay. Living through this time, that means also technology issues, and we're gonna get through this. We're gonna get through this. All right. Thank you all so much for engaging in that. So when we think about our personal stakes and what we have here in this election, something I want us to keep in mind always is that elections have consequences and they have rewards. The people who we elect into office are important, and if we do it right, they reflect our values. It's important to recognize that depending on our identities and our personal experiences, there can be a lot at stake, both personally and collectively, just like how we just saw in that past conversation that we just had. I saw in the chat that some of us are scared because we're women. Some people are scared because they may be a part of a marginalized community. And so I want you to go ahead and drop in the chat, what is at stake for you? What do you think is at stake for you? Issue-wise, what issue may be at stake for you in the election this November? And if you can drop that in the chat. Freedom, a woman's right to choose, reproductive rights, healthcare, literally life. I feel that. Education, the decency of my city and beyond, faith in humanity, economic stability, the climate crisis, life in general. Y'all, it's a lot at stake. I think that's the bottom line, right? The bottom line is that we are all dealing with something personally and collectively. And hopefully during this time together, we can figure out how can we use this reflection time to move ourselves and our people that we love to action, so that when at the end of the election, we feel good about the choices that we made and the outcome that we have as well, whatever that outcome is for you. Awesome. We are going to shift now into the significance into barriers to voting while young. So at this point in time, we have identified what is this moment in time? What are we seeing collectively and personally? We've talked about what's at stake for us personally and how that may show up. And now we're saying, okay, we know what's at stake. We know what our people and our communities are going through. Now, what do I need to do? What barriers may I face as a young person while voting? And what significance does my vote have anyway? This is where we're heading into now. Before I even get to the power that you have in terms of your voting, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that every big movement that we have seen here in the United States has had young people in it. And not only had young people in it, but they had young people at the forefront who were leading, who were putting their bodies on the line, and who are being a part of the amazing change that we have seen that has moved us to where we are today. From the civil rights movement in the 1960s to environmental justice, LGBTQ rights, immigrant rights, and even more recently, the uprisings that we're seeing across the country, as well as March for Our Lives. I feel like that is one of the easiest examples that we can see where young people have stood up and they have said, my voice matters, my experiences matter, and you will not ignore me. So I want to take a moment to recognize that aside from voting, you have power. No matter what way you decide to show up in this movement, you have power. You have always had power, and you have always pushed us to be better. Now let's get into it. And I see in the chats, young people making change, young generation, Generation Z making change. I'm here for it. I'm here for all the hype. Now let's get into how we make change as young people voting wise. Here on this map, I have zoomed into 2020 specifically. Young people have power in general, but I wanted to point out these 10 states where youth participation will probably most likely make or break who get those electoral votes in these states. These 10 states are Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida, Iowa, Arizona in the House, Michigan, New Hampshire, Minnesota, and Maine. Something that's really cool about this map is that about 7 out of the 10 states on here are battleground states, are swing states: Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida, Arizona, Michigan, and Minnesota. These are all states that as of right now are considered a toss-up. We don't know who is going to grab those votes, but we do know that young people will play a huge role in deciding where those votes go. Now, I have a question for you. When you think about your own power in voting and voting while young, have you ever been discouraged from voting? If so, why? Why have you been discouraged from voting? Was it a particular experience that you've had at the polls? Was it something that someone has said? Is it because you think it just doesn't matter? What comes to mind for you if you've ever been discouraged from voting? I see some people saying, no, I've not been discouraged. I see in the chat, older people think younger people are not educated. Yes, because I don't know enough about politics. Maybe according to someone older, you're not mature enough to understand. Feel like your voice won't be heard. Friends and their opinions. You're seeing a lot of posts saying that your vote will not change anything. Whew, 10 days after the election. Just because I'm one person and like a trillion. The electoral college, religious institutions pushing us to vote in a certain way. I feel all of this. I have been on all the sides. I have been really pumped up and ready to go. And I have been very discouraged sometimes for all the reasons that you all have already named. And we're going to get into some of these right now. So some of the common things that people say about young people and voting. Before I dive into these, what do you think some of these are? I think we've already heard some of them, right? Maybe that you're not mature enough. You don't know enough. It doesn't matter. Their vote doesn't matter. Institutions. So one of the common things that folks say about young people and voting is that young people just complain. They never show up. Drop a 1 in the chat if you've heard that before. I've heard it. Young people just complain. They never show up. Another one. Young people are entitled. Put a 5 in the chat if you're like, yep, heard that one too. Young people are entitled. Young people don't understand, nor do they care about elections. We've already seen some of these in the chat, but go ahead and drop a 3 if you have heard this personally or on the internet. Young people don't understand, nor do they care about elections. These are all narratives that have been on social media before. Maybe someone said it on the news. Maybe they're our parents, our friends, and people who are older than us. Now let's talk about some of the common things that we say as young people. What do we say as young people about voting? Something I've heard before is the electoral college is rigged. My vote doesn't matter. Drop a 2 if you're like, yep, I've said that. Or like, yep, my best friend tells me that all the time. The electoral college is rigged. My vote doesn't matter. We got a lot of 2s in the chat. A lot of people can agree with this or have heard it before. Then the next one I have here is, what's the point? Nothing ever changes no matter who the president is. Drop a 7 if you have said this before or you've heard someone else say it. What's the point? Nothing ever changes no matter who the president is. I see a lot of folks in the chat who can resonate with this. I see someone has their hand up. Let me see. Jamie, I actually can't see who has their hand up, so if you want to let me know, that would
Grace, I just allowed you to talk if you want to say something.
I don't know. I didn't mean to click it. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Well, you know what? Now that's a feature we know we have, though. So if you do have a question and you want to talk, raise your hand. Awesome. So these are some of the narratives that we have seen either ourselves say, our friends, our family members say, again, through social media, maybe in person in conversation, on the news. But I want to talk about some of the truth. What are some things that we know to be true? We know that negative narratives about young people contribute to why young voters won't participate. And I think we saw that a little bit earlier in the chat as well, right? Some people saying, oh, my mom didn't encourage me to, or she said I didn't understand. And that made me feel like, that made me feel a little discouraged, right? So we know that depending on the language we are using about voting and that relationship to young people, that actually discourages young people to be a part of the system and use their voice. We also know that many young people have the intention to vote, but are met with many barriers. We'll get to these barriers in a second, but some of our data shows that some young people are really excited. They want to make their voice heard. And then when it comes to time to do so, those barriers will get put in place, and maybe that even discourages them the next time around. The third thing is that when we look at history and time, each generation gets bolder and bolder in asking for what we want and deserve. And so us young people aren't entitled. We just expect more from the people who serve us. We expect more from our government. Drop a 2 in the chat if you're like, yeah, I'm not entitled. I feel that. I shouldn't feel bad for wanting more. I shouldn't feel bad for wanting to be excited about the election or the people who are going to represent me, right? That's something to keep in mind. Some other truth that we know. A lot of folks talked about the Electoral College in the chat. Yes, the Electoral College is outdated. It is a process, unfortunately, that at the moment we still must engage with for now. But something I know to be true is that the more people who vote, the bigger chance we have at seeing change on every level of government. And that goes from federal all the way down. I also want to point out that some states have already been looking into legislation that gives their electoral votes to the person who won the popular vote. So if you're saying right now, okay, I don't like the Electoral College and this is something that discourages me, I want you to know that there is also some legislation moving. There are some things happening where states are saying, okay, I think Colorado is one of these states, right? But some states are saying for whoever wins our popular vote, that's who's getting our electoral votes. And so these are ways that states and on the state level, people and institutions are starting to make a change in that way. And what I know to be true is that in history, when we see that more states actually start to adopt policies like this, sooner or later, it becomes adopted on the federal level for all states. And so for me, that gives me some hope about the Electoral College, and I hope it gives you some too. That's my song for you. All right. My last truth that I have for you is that young people are indeed voting. And not only are we voting, we are breaking records. The census found that 36% of citizens ages 18 to 29 reported voting in 2018's midterm elections. That is jumping 16 percentage points since 2014, when turnout was only 20%, and easily surpassing any midterm elections. So we are voting. Things are happening. The rhetoric may not match up to that. What we're seeing and how people talk about us may not match up to that, but the data don't lie, let me tell you. And guess what? I have receipts. As a young person, y'all know we stay with the receipts. Here is a clip from some of the census data that shows the national voter turnout. And this has the midterm elections from 1978 to 2018. So this doesn't break down young people, but we do see that in general, our population is actually starting to vote more and more. Starting from 48.9, moving all the way to 53.4 in the 2018. And this is just for midterm elections, y'all. This is not even for the big presidential years. Receipt 2, because I stay with the receipts, is that here we have it broken down by age. 18 to 29-year-olds. Again, in 2014, that was 19.9. 2018, 35.6. The difference is 15.7 points. Woo-hoo, woo-hoo. That's us, y'all. That's us young people. I'm 24 years old. That's me. That's you if you are in this voting block as well. Before I move on, I want you to take a second to just look at this graph and tell me what you see. What else do you see on here in the change in voter turnout by characteristics from 2014 to 2018? You can drop that in the chat. What else do you see here from this graphic? Anything else that you notice? More women voting? Generally increasing across the board? What else? What else do we see here? More naturalized citizens taking part in voting. Yep, more women started voting. What else? An increase across the board. And more voters. Absolutely. 65 plus still has the most turnout. That's very true, Michaela. 65 plus does still have the most turnout. They've had more time to figure it out though, in my opinion, but we're gonna get there. We're gonna catch up. We are going to catch up. More education equals more voting. That is a great one. Thank you for catching that, Rebecca. More minority groups voting. The more younger voters increase in voter turnout than 30 plus. Latinos in the midterms, ayy. I see all of you showing up and showing out. Yes, and I have no doubt about it that all of these groups will show up and show out again in November, including all of you who are on this call. All right, so now that we have recognized the times that we are living in, the stakes that we have in this election, the power that we have as young people, not only when we vote, but when we participate in big movements to push our country forward. Now let's talk about the barriers our community or you may be facing as a young person when it comes to voting. Go ahead and drop that in the chat. What do you think some barriers are? Gracia says misinformation spreading. You got that one right. That misinformation. What else? What are some other barriers that maybe we face as young people or some of our other communities? I see media, gerrymandering, transportation, not enough education about voting, lack of trust, not being able to get time off of work, complicated registration. Yes, needing certain IDs, lack of voting sites for in-person voting, living abroad, slower mail for absentee. All of this and a bag of chips, y'all. When we think about the barriers to voting while young, one of the main things that I recognize, not only when doing my own research, but talking to my family and friends who are also young, is that there is lack of access to a polling location. What does that lack of access mean? Maybe that means no transportation at all. They can't get there. Maybe that is the fact that it's inconvenient hours or that the location of the polling place isn't accessible. Maybe the young person who wanted to go vote was too busy and they had a conflict on election day. What happens if you can't vote that day and your state doesn't have something in place to where you can vote early, right? Maybe there was issues with the voter registration or they registered too late. Everything that you all have already said, the complicated voter registration. Maybe the line at the polling place was too long. You only had 10 minutes out of your workday to go to a polling place and the line was gonna take an hour, so you weren't able to cast your vote. Maybe there was a problem with the voter ID because it wasn't communicated right or you quote unquote brought the wrong one, even though you know who you are, right? That happens sometimes. Some other barriers to voting while young. Again, things that all of you have already said in the chat. That lack of education / outreach to young people. There are so many mixed messages about how to vote. People are hearing things from so many different places and it adds into the misinformation that gets spread. There's also a disconnect between young people and campaigns, right? A lot of you have said in the chat that maybe you just don't have trust in institutions anymore. Or maybe no one has reached out to you. That is a disconnect that we are seeing. We are also seeing that there's just a straight up lack of knowledge on local politics. A lot of people don't know that there are local elections that affect their everyday life. If they don't know these things, they're also going to be more encouraged to not vote because they don't see that point, right? When we think about things always being at the top. And then again, that lack of representation and buy-in. Why would you want to vote as a young person if you don't see anyone who looks like you? Why would you want to be a part of the system, right? When the folks who may be running are not representing your values. And so we know that all of these things are actually barriers. There are barriers to young people, and there are barriers to why a lot of folks don't participate in the system. But I'm here to talk about a few solutions while we're here. So we know that it's hard, right? We saw that it's hard already. Y'all had a whole list that we could have printed out that probably could have been a whole 5 pages long about the barriers to voting while young. To provide some hope for you all, I want to take a moment to talk about some proposed solutions that some states, again, are already starting to adopt, or some organizations across the state, across the country are starting to push for. One is automatic voter registration. What does this mean? It means that when you turn 18 and you need to go to the DMV or whatever, you're actually already automatically registered because they already have your information in the system. We know that that can help turn out the vote. We know that that can help eliminate the problem of the confusion of registering to vote if it automatically happens when you turn 18. Also, same-day voter registration. If you miss the deadline and you decide you want to go vote right before election and you're in a state like Arizona where you can't do that, you can't vote in that election. Same-day voter registration is a step in the right direction to make sure, and some states do have that. That's right, Christina. Again, some states are already adopting some of these things, which gives me hope, because hopefully that means that we can spread this federally all around. Also, Election Day being a federal holiday. I think actually Virginia probably just adopted this. But what does this mean when it is, I'm sorry, a state holiday? I put federal here, but it should be a state holiday. This means that maybe you get the day off from work. So if you need to go vote, you're not trying to do it in between jobs or doing it at an inconvenient time. You actually have the day to maybe be a poll worker. You have the day to go and take your time and go vote. Maybe pick up your friends along the way, right? But it's a holiday. We can celebrate our civic engagement. Other things is just simple, more options for voting. Some states already have this. Here in Arizona, we can vote by mail, or as some people call it, absentee, right? Not only can we vote by mail, but I can take my mail-in ballot and drop it off at a drop box here in Maricopa County. I can also take it on the day of and drop it off if I don't want to stand in line. I can also do weekend voting. I can also vote at any polling location at an early voting site. There's so many different options, and we know that more options help increase inclusivity to the voting process. And then lastly, local civics taught in schools. I don't know about y'all, but when I was in K-12 school, we learned about the 3 branches of government on the federal level, and I did not learn about my mayor. I did not learn about city council. I did not learn about any of these things that actually impact me every day. I didn't learn about school board, none of these things, right? But how much more buy-in will we have if we actually knew the people who are accessible to us, not the people who are in Washington, right? But the people who we go to the grocery store with, right? The people who are in our schools and making sure that our students are good. Those are some things that we know can help increase that participation. And I think I saw a question in the chat. I see here, what about mail-in voting fraud? Thank you for that question. From my work in voting rights and working on tackling voter suppression, there's actually literally less than, I want to say 1%. And my team who's on here, Christina or anybody else, you can feel free to chime in. Less than like 1% of actual voter fraud. From what I have seen in the work that I have personally done, voter fraud has been something that has been said to actually scare more people and frighten them from voting. Again, contributing to the reasons why maybe some people are discouraged because they feel like their vote won't count, or there are people out there doing fraud, right? And so in my experience, it has been a myth. It has been a talking point. I see here in the chat, the FBI found evidence of 1 case per state per year over 20 years. Yeah, that's like very, very little. So that's my opinion on that question. And thank you for raising that, because I know that is a concern for a lot of people. Awesome. And then the last thing I have here on this slide is something that, yes, these solutions are great. Some of our states are already moving in that direction, but I want you to know that we are the ones we've been waiting for. We can push our states to make these things happen, to make sure that they are more accessible to the people who look like us, to the people who are our age, to the people who want to vote but maybe have lost faith. We are the ones who can do that. We are the ones who can mobilize our friends and our family and can start to change the narrative of what we see around voting and what happens around voting. If our vote didn't matter, they wouldn't try so hard to suppress it. I'm gonna say this one more time, in case you didn't catch that. If our vote didn't matter, they wouldn't try so hard to suppress it. Actually, I'm gonna say it one more time. If our vote didn't matter, they wouldn't try so hard to suppress it. I can't emphasize this enough. We are important. Our voices are important. Our voices deserve to be heard. If they were not important, it wouldn't be a fight, right? All these things that we just talked about, all these barriers wouldn't be a thing. But we know that they are. We know that there are real, valid barriers to voting, not only to young people, but to folks who may be disabled, folks who are a part of other marginalized groups. And so I can't stress enough that our vote matters and that we are the ones that we've been waiting for to change the narrative around what we see and what we hear around voting. We have the power to persuade our friends and family. We have the power to plan, right? And we have the power to mobilize. We have the power to bring people to the polls. We can do that, y'all. We don't need anybody else to do that. You can do that, I can do that, we can do it together. No matter what state you're in, we have the power to persuade, to plan, and mobilize, and that's what we're about to get into right now. Now, if you're ready to get into this, just drop the deuces in the chat for me one time for the one time. I really wish I could see y'all faces because I'm like super hype right now. And I feel like y'all super hyped too, but I can't see you. But it's okay. One day we'll all meet when COVID is over. All right, I see some fire in the chat. The twos are up. So we ready. Maya says we hype. All right, y'all, let's get into it. We are about to dive into our persuasion toolbox. This is one of my favorite parts. So one, our persuasion toolbox is what we are going to use to persuade. When I'm thinking about persuade in this context, y'all, again, I'm not talking about persuading someone to vote for a specific candidate. Right now, I'm talking about how do we even persuade our family and friends and the people we love to just vote, to just make their voice heard. So in our persuasion toolbox, we have a few things that can help us. One is our personal story. Two, are issues that matter most to us. Three is simple active listening and empathy. Four is that emphasis on local elections. And five, history / big wins. They're always our friend. We are gonna get into what this looks like. So personal story. Before I even get into this slide that I have, can you drop in the chat, why do you think our personal stories are so powerful when we're trying to persuade someone to vote? Why do our personal stories matter? And I see I forgot the other quote at the end, but y'all know it's a quote. Okay, Grace says, it creates an emotional connection. It can inspire others, absolutely. What else, y'all? It gives them incentive. People can relate, I love that. It gives people more perspective on topics to inspire them. Yes, everyone has different experiences, so it lets you open their eyes, more perspective. Someone can't tell you what you did and did not experience. Ooh, Sophia, that was some fire. Someone cannot tell you what you did and did not experience. Your personal story is yours. That is something they cannot argue. They can argue whatever else they want, but they cannot argue your experience. And that is so powerful. Our story can inspire. It can set some credibility. It sparks a fire in them. It gives them a different perspective. I see empathy. Yes, yes, yes. It creates a safe space. I love all of this. Y'all, the people who we are talking to, the people who we need to mobilize, those are real people who have real lives and do real things. These are not robots, right? And so though facts and numbers may help out sometimes, our personal story is gonna be what pushes someone to move to action. So I have here as an example, as someone who, I'm talking about me, that's me. As someone who is an organizer and is actively involved year round, I see how the decisions our elected officials make affect us every day. I know voting in people who reflect our values will help us create meaningful change. This is something that I use sometimes when I think about my personal story. This was different a few years ago when I wasn't as involved, but I know now that the people who know me and love me, they trust me because they know that I'm on the front lines. They know that I'm engaging and organizing all the time. So I can tell them from firsthand experience, I see that when we have elected officials in office who value us and our opinions, things change. And this is how they change, right? This has been my experience with that. This has been the opposite, right? That's something for me. I want you to recognize that I have here as someone who, this is how we relate, as someone who is an organizer. Go ahead and drop in the chat. If you were talking to someone about your personal story, what would your as someone who be? Is it as someone who is a student? As someone who is a woman? Are you also an organizer? Maybe it's as someone who's an organizer. As someone who has seen X, Y, and Z, what is that for you? Go ahead and drop that in the chat. As someone who is a server. As someone who is a native Hawaiian, yes, our identities mean so much to them, us. As someone who is a queer woman of color. As someone who is a Christian man. A student, a feminist. Someone who works within politics. Someone who has a mixed race. I love all of these. Again, feminist, a daughter of an immigrant, a female student aspiring to travel the world, someone who has parents who are registered in separate political parties. Wow, what a powerful perspective. As someone who is a healthcare worker, whew, that holds some weight, especially in these times, right? As someone who has an autistic sister. Y'all, these are so powerful. As someone who has different political views than my family. These are the stories that will move people. These are the stories when people recognize what's at stake. Again, going back to this moment in time and what this means for us personally and collectively. This is how we get there. As someone who is an Asian American, thank you all so much for being vulnerable and sharing that in the chat. The next thing in our persuasion toolbox are issues. Issues that matter most to us. So here, this is a quote that I use a lot when I'm talking to my friends who feel really strongly about police brutality. I try to connect voting back to that issue for them. The quote here is, I know you have strong feelings about police brutality and the lack of accountability from the Phoenix Police Department. Our city council members and mayor are up for re-election and have a big say in how our police departments are ran, right? So here I'm saying, okay, if the issue is police brutality, and this is what this person really cares about, how do I actually connect that to an elected official or someone who holds that power? Well, the mayor helps deal with things like that. Our city council has something to deal with our budget when it comes to police and things of that nature. So I'm going to connect it to them. Why do you think connecting issues and elections are so important? Why are issues a part of our persuasion toolbox? Go ahead and drop that in the chat. Why do you think issues may be a part of our persuasion toolbox? Drop that in the chat for me. It is a drive to make change. People value resolution to solutions. Yep, to find solutions. It's what people, it helps better society. Some people are not informed. Yes, that's a big one, right? A lot of people don't know how their issues are actually connected to certain people or certain elected offices. To help learn from past mistakes, to motivate and create a better world. Absolutely. For me, issues have been so powerful in the way I talk to my family and friends because it shows how everything is connected. These things don't happen in silos, y'all. They don't happen in silos. They are all a part of something bigger, and our vote actually plays a say in that part of the system. It helps to motivate and to understand some of the issues. I see politicians' records on these matters. It tells their stories and directly impact and shape our stories. Absolutely. Next I have here is active listening and empathy. I underlined here, I understand and recognize. I understand and recognize that it's hard to participate in a system that didn't have you in mind when being built. Have you thought about getting involved in other ways? I'm going to say this one more time. I understand and recognize that it's hard to participate in a system that didn't have you in mind when being built. Have you thought about getting involved in other ways? I wanted to highlight active listening and empathy because it is so important as we are sharing our stories and trying to connect to people to move them to action. If we do not understand and if we do not recognize that actually the system wasn't built for some of us in mind, even when we think about us as young people, right? Then that can actually, again, discourage someone from wanting to be involved at all. I have had friends who maybe are gonna vote this year, but actually got involved in other ways first. They had to get activated through a protest, or they had to get activated through a community organization having listening sessions before they felt compelled enough to vote. And so what I'm trying to get at here is that sometimes it takes a long game. There are gonna be some friends and family who you are gonna get to vote right away this election, and there are gonna be some of your other folks who are gonna need some time because this is hard. This is not easy for a lot of us, right? And we have to make sure we're using active listening and empathy when we're having these tough conversations. The next thing I have here are local elections. So this is kind of similar to issues, but it actually zooms in a little bit more to specifically our local elections and what's happening. So here I say, I know education means a lot to you. A good reason to show up to the polls is because there are so many amazing school board candidates who can make tangible change in our schools. In addition, there's Prop 208, which is the Invested Ed ballot initiative that will give our schools more funding, right? And so some people may not be excited about the top of the ticket, which may turn them off completely and say, I'm not voting. Local elections gives us a chance to at least get them there, right? We can get them there by saying, you know what, I hear you, but let's talk about some local people. Let's talk about some local initiatives that are happening that can help affect some real meaningful change. And so again, bringing it back to the local, telling them something that they don't know, informing them is another great way, another thing that we have in our persuasion toolbox to help us persuade our peers. And lastly, I have history and big wins. Why do you think history is in our persuasion toolbox or big wins in the past? Why do you think that is in our persuasion toolbox? Go ahead and drop that in the chats. History can repeat itself. Gracia says it creates credibility. That's a good one. Again, history repeating itself. Hard evidence that voting matters. Ooh, I like that one. Hard evidence, the facts. Motivation shows tried and true examples. Ooh, Christina says because some elections, very local ones, have been decided by a few votes. We have made progression in the past. It shows that change can happen. Yes, y'all. All of that in a bag of chips. What I like to tell folks is, hey, do you remember Prop 206? That ballot initiative that increased minimum wage from $8.05 to $12, this helped a lot of Arizonans struggling to get by. And we have the opportunity to make more change like that this year at the polls, right? So maybe you can look back at some wins that have happened in your community in the past and say, actually, look what happened here. And look what change we were able to make. And that also may help inspire people to move to action when it comes to voting. So some tips, do's and don'ts for using your persuasion toolbox. And then Matthew, I'll get to your question right after this. So some do's, keep in mind, we want to listen with care. Again, these are real people with real experiences. We do want to use our personal experiences when we're talking to folks. We do want to have an open mind. This helps us figure out how do we want to respond in our persuasion toolbox. We do want to encourage. Please ignore the shake the gate, because I just realized that that is there. When we send you the slides, I'll take that out. But we do want to encourage. We want to encourage our folks. What we don't want to do is shame, belittle, use fear as a tactic, harass, or create false hope. The do's and don'ts are pretty self-explanatory here, but something I want to zoom in on is the creating false hope. Go ahead and drop in the chat, what do you think that means when I say creating false hope? Drop in the chat, what do you think I'm talking about here? Why don't we want to create false hope? Promises you can't keep is what Ryan says. Absolutely. What else? It lets people down because it can cause distrust. Yes, it can further cause distrust in our communities. It would disappoint people to not engage in the future. We further deter. Yes, y'all know what y'all are talking about here. Their voters are losing more trust. We don't want to overpromise. What we don't want to do to our folks, y'all, is tell them that their entire lives will change the moment after election. We don't want to tell them that. We don't want to create that false hope. What we do want to do is encourage them and let them know that voting is like one of the ways that we are creating the world we want to see in this long game. It is one of the many tactics that are pushing us forward. Voting is not the only way to make change. And I actually encourage all of you to encourage all of your friends to get involved even further. Can you volunteer for a cause that you really care about, right? Can you get involved a little bit further in your schools if you care about education? It's going to take more. Voting is just the start of it. Voting is our statement that says that I want to make change. And then what we do after the voting is also what matters. So we don't want to create a false hope that our whole lives will change in a split second after that. But we do want to tell people that voting is a part of that long game. And I see here in the chat, it does yield results. Yes, and we can mark those results and whatever that means for us. Promising someone change that they really need and it not being delivered. Yes, those are some things we don't want to do. Thank you for bringing that up, Kate. All right. We're pushing through, y'all. We have about 32 more minutes. I'm excited to engage in this last 30. So far, again, we have talked about this moment in time, what it means for us collectively and personally. We have talked about what is at stake. We have looked at all the amazing things in our persuasion toolbox. We are ready to go. We know how to persuade our friends and the people we love. Now it's time to plan. We need to get those people to the polls, okay? I see we're getting pumped up. Okay, we still pumped. I'm here for it. I am so here for it, y'all. If you are you ready? If you are still here with me, if you're still engaging, go ahead and drop that 2 in the chat so I know I'm not here alone, because I wish I could see all of you. Thank you. I really feel the love. One day I will meet you. I'm manifesting that. I will meet all of your beautiful faces one day. All right, here we go. Did you know that making a plan to vote increases your likelihood of actually voting? Drop a 1 in the chat if you're like, yes, I knew that. And drop a 3 if you're like, what? For real? A lot of people have their 1s. I see 1, 3, a few 3s. They're like, I did not know that. That's okay. We're all here to learn. Yes, making a plan to vote increases your likelihood of actually voting. But first, before you can even make your plan to vote, we have to make sure that you are registered to vote and informed. So here I clicked on this link. All of you will have access to these links in the slide. But something I want to show you all here is this cool tool that my colleague Christina showed me. So shout out to Christina, who's also on this call. But on this tool, it will tell you about what it's like voting in your state. So you'll see here that at the top it has, can I vote by mail without an excuse? Can I register to vote and cast my ballot on the same day? And I can click any of these, and then it'll tell me, yes, I can cast my ballot on the same day. No, I can't. I mean, I can register to vote and cast my ballot on the same day. Can I vote in person before election day? And you see that this varies a lot by state. So I do want to point that out. There are a lot of us on here from a lot of different parts of the country, and we have to make sure we get super specific so you have the right information that you need. But this tool lets you look at all of this. Not only does it tell you how you can vote in your state, but it tells you the rules too down here. So you'll see here in Arizona, the deadline to register to vote, I have 10 days left. Our deadline here in Arizona is October 5th. It also tells me about, again, if I can mail in person. I'm sorry, if I can mail in my ballot or go in person. Can I vote by mail without an excuse? All that good stuff. It also says here, see more information on registering to vote. So if I need to register, I just click on that link, y'all. If you're in Arizona, you know about Service Arizona. Service Arizona will get us registered to vote, but it does this for every state. And so this is a pretty dope tool that I encourage you all to play around with later when you receive these slides, when you have this link. And I can actually just go ahead and drop it in the chat too, if y'all wanted to follow along in the meantime. But yes, this is a great tool to start us off when we think about our plan to vote. Okay, back here. So before we even start making our plan, we have to make sure that we are registered, one, and that we are well-versed in knowing our deadlines for our specific state. And I would even go further to say, look at your specific county as well, because sometimes different counties have different rules on how they do things. So I want you to get informed, and hopefully that link will help you out. The next thing we do is we get to making our plan. And I have a few steps here that we can follow. Again, first thing is we want to check our status and get informed on those state voting deadlines. The second thing we want to do as individuals is create a personal voting plan. We want to know what we are doing first. We cannot help anyone else if we don't know what we're doing. So don't forget that step, y'all. We have to create our personal voting plan. 3, we want to list out 5+ people who you want to get out the vote. 5+ people, a minimum 5 people. But if you want to go above and beyond and say, you know what, I'm going to get 15 people to make sure that they get out the vote, that works too. 4, we want to make sure that those 5+ people are registered and that we can assist them in creating their voting plan. Oh, Christina says she's making her list now. On it, I feel you. Number 5, we want to send them a reminder because people forget, they will forget, okay? And then lastly, we want to follow through and make sure that we do our plan, but then we follow up again because people will forget because we're humans and we make mistakes. So keep that in mind. Now you're probably thinking, okay, Shelley, thanks for telling me about this plan, but how do I make a plan? And don't worry, I got you. So 1, we are going to decide how you'll vote. That's like one of your first steps, deciding how do you want to vote. Do you want to vote by mail, if you have the option? Remember, this all depends on your state. Are you going to vote in person? Are you voting in person early, or are you voting on election day? Are you going to drop your ballot off in a drop box? But how will you vote? 2, when will you vote? After you know the how, you want to know the when. How will you vote? And then when you'll vote. So be specific. Be specific. Be specific. Pick a day and a time that you are going to vote. The 3, now I can't talk. The 3. 3, decide where you'll vote. So if you're not voting by mail, right? Because if you're voting by mail, you'll be voting in the comfort of your home. But if you're not doing that, you want to pick a drop box or a polling location, the actual one, so you know. And then of course you want to take your mask and your hand sanitizer if you're voting in person, because we want to stay safe. I see here in the comments, I saw something that said that if you do all 3, you can go to jail. Is that true? And Kiara, do you mean like if you mail, you go in person and you do a drop box? Is that what you mean? Because if so, yes, it is illegal to vote more than one time. More than likely they'll catch that. So if you go in person and you say, my name is Shelley Jackson and I'm trying to vote, and you've already voted, they usually catch that. But do not do that. Do not do that. Pick one. If you don't take anything away from this, take away that you need to decide how you'll vote one time. We are not voting multiple times, just once. We want to vote once. We're going to decide our how, our when, and our where. Tip: once you check your own status and create a specific plan for yourself, it is much easier to help someone else with theirs. This is so important, y'all. Again, don't help your friends or your family until you know exactly what you're going to do. Because once you go through the process of doing it all, it's going to be so much easier to help someone else. Here are some examples of a voting plan. I am voting by mail, so this is our how, and will mail back my ballot by October 15th. Again, these are some examples that I came up for Arizona folks too. This is how I think I'm gonna vote. I'm gonna vote by mail, and I'm gonna make sure I mail back my ballot by October 15th. That's my plan. I have a deadline set. I know how I'm gonna vote. I know when I'm gonna vote. Number 2, here's another example. I am voting on election day, okay, by dropping off my ballot inside the Percival Julian School polling location. What do you notice about this second one? Go ahead and drop your answers in the chat. What are you noticing about this second example of a voting plan? It's detailed. Yup. Exactly. It's more specific. Exactly. It says here, Percival Julian. Because if you say polling location, it's going to be the time where you go vote. You're going to be like, oh, dang, which polling location? So we want to make sure, that we are being very specific in how we are voting. And then for folks who have questions, I'm going to take them in just a couple minutes, but if you want to put them in the Q&A portion, so that way they don't get lost in the comments, you can go ahead and put them there. And then the third example that I have here is I'm voting early in person on October 31st at the Mountain Park Health Center polling location, and will be taking my brother and my mom to vote with me. Ooh, this person went above and beyond. They say, you know what, I'm just gonna knock out all 3 of us at one time. I know I'm gonna vote early in person on this specific day. I'm going to this polling location, and my brother and my mom are actually coming with me. Christina says, I like to also schedule a time of day when I'm going to vote. That's so good, right? I'm voting in person, early in person on October 31st, maybe at 3 p.m. at the Mountain Park Health Center. And you put that in your calendar too, because you want to follow up. Now, here are some examples of how we get our friends to vote and our family to vote. Maybe we want to have some type of sheet, or it can be a note in your iPhone, whatever your heart desires. But we want to have something that writes all this stuff down. The name of the person who we're trying to get out the vote, your relationship with them, your phone number, their phone number. You want to know their voting plan, and you want to send them a reminder. So here are some examples. I have here my sister, Michelle. She's my sister. I ain't gonna give y'all her number. I ain't gonna do her like that. But her voting plan is voting by mail, and we'll mail back the ballot by October 15th. So what I'm gonna do as someone who wants to hold her accountable and make sure that she gets out the vote is I'm gonna text, actually I put text or call, but I'm probably gonna do both because my sister needs some extra push, okay? So I'm gonna text and call her on October 14th to make sure that her voting plan is in place and she knows exactly where she's going, exactly what she's doing, and she doesn't have any questions. And I'm gonna put that reminder in my phone so I don't forget, because I will forget. So we always wanna make sure we have our reminder. Another example here is I have my Aunt Deborah. She's gonna be voting on election day, Persuade Julian. I'm gonna call and email. I'm emailing my Aunt Deborah because she's the person who needs to be emailed. She doesn't do text, but she will get an email and she will look at her email. So I know that I'm gonna call my Aunt Deborah, I'll probably email her at the beginning of the day and then call her at the end of November 2nd and just make sure that she is ready to go and she doesn't have any questions, because I want to make sure that she gets out the vote. Ideally, we'll have 5+ people on here so that we can make sure that those folks get out the vote. And if you even want to be super ambitious, we can ask those 5 people to do that for another 5 people, right? So we can make sure that this keeps going. Tip: life happens and people will forget. I've stressed this enough already. Make sure you send them a reminder the day before to make sure their voting plan is still in motion. So again, a reminder. We want to check our status and get informed first. We want to know what we're talking about. We don't want to go preaching to no one. We don't want to go talking to anyone before we know what's going on, okay? So we want to check our own voter registration status, make sure we're registered. Then we want to get informed on state voting deadlines. I want to point out that voter registration is coming up really fast for most states. Here in Arizona, I know you have to be registered by October 5th. So that's just in 10 days. So I encourage you, the moment we get off of here, if you have time, check that status, make sure you're registered, and then start checking your friends too. Once you've done this, you can start creating your personal voting plan. Decide how you will vote, when you'll vote. Then again, you want to list out your 5+ people who you want to get out the vote. You're going to again make sure they're registered, and then from there you can assist them in creating their voting plan. Because if you ask them if they have a plan to vote, they're gonna be like, yeah, I do. I'm gonna vote. That's my plan. Y'all know those people. They're gonna be like, that's my plan to vote. So you want to say no. When are you gonna vote? How are you going to vote? And then again, you're gonna send them a reminder probably the day or 2 days before. And you're gonna follow through and you are going to vote, and you're gonna follow up again and make sure that they are all set to go. Because we're human and we forget. Now, before I get into the what questions do you still have, does anyone on here already have a voting plan? Drop a 1 if you're like, I do now, because you're walking through it in your head. Drop a 3 if you're like, no, but I'm gonna do it ASAP Rocky. Okay, we got some ASAP Rockies in here. 1, you already know what you're gonna do. 4 is maybe like, I don't know either one yet. That's okay. We're looking good. All right. My next question is, do you have your list of people already that you know who you want to get out the vote? Do you have a list of 5+ people? If you do, drop your 5. If you don't, say, put up a 4. The 4 tells me though that like, once we get done with this, I'm creating my list. Yup. Because we're going to get out those votes because we have the power as young people. We can do this. Awesome. I love it. We love to see it. Y'all are doing great. And now we have, I'm doing great on time, y'all. We have 15 minutes left for questions. I have one question already in here. Can I vote from another state if I'm not a resident of the one I'm in, but I'm in another? Let me read this one more time. Can I vote from another state? I'm not a resident of the one I'm in, but I am in another. Yes, if you are a registered voter in another state and that's where you are registered and that's where you are a resident, that is where you are going to be voting. For example, I have friends who went to be with family in another state right now through the pandemic. They didn't think the pandemic was going to be this long. They thought they were going to be back here in Arizona, but they haven't. They're not there, but they're still actually residents in Arizona. They're not residents in wherever they are now. So they are going to be still voting here. Does that make sense? I don't know who that was because it says anonymous, but yes. And anyone who's from my team who's on here and has anything to add, please go ahead and drop that in the chat. And then I have a question here. Do you trust mail-in ballots? That is a great question, Matthew. For me personally, I live in Arizona, as you all know. I live in Maricopa County, and our county recorder, who is the person who oversees your elections process in your county, you all may want to look them up and look up their procedures. Again, that is the county recorder. I know that the county recorder in Maricopa County is actually pretty great at making sure that voters have accessibility. And that I know that the county recorder here in Maricopa County does a really good job at making sure that there's going to be a smooth process. So I can say for here locally, I trust voting by mail in Maricopa County. That is something that I feel good about. If you are questioning if that's a route that you want to go, I encourage you to look at your county recorder and see what are some things what are precautions that they are taking? What are some things that they're going to make sure are in place so your voice is going to be heard through mail? And then Christina says, check your state's absentee/mail-in guidance. Each state calls it something different. That's true. Here in Arizona, we call it PEVL, the Permanent Early Voting List. And other places, it's called absentee, it's called mail, it's called something different. So make sure you check that. Amaya says, is voting in person a bad idea because of long lines and also COVID? I think, I'm sorry, did I glitch? Okay, I'm good. Thank you, Christina. Okay. Is voting in person a bad idea because of long lines and also COVID? I think that it is best for us to vote in whatever way feels good for us. My aunt is someone who's like, I don't care, I'm voting in person because she's old school. And she's like, I want to know that it is in there, right? Like, I want to know that the system took it and that it was me who did it, right? That is how she feels good about voting. And I can't convince her to do anything else. We got drop boxes, we got all types of other things here in Arizona. And she's an older woman who's like, an older Black woman, she's like, nope. No, ma'am, I will be going in person. And so she is ready to take all of her precautions. She is going to make sure she has her mask and she has her hand sanitizer, and she feels good about voting. That may not be something that I want to do or I feel comfortable with. So I think it's going to be important that when we think about our own voting plan, we're doing something that feels good to us. Let's see here. I also see, I answered that. How do we do research on our local politicians? This is a great question. If you're wondering, what about the people who represent me? What are the ballot initiatives? My first suggestion is there an organization in your state that you trust? Organizations are a great way and have been building bridges for like community and elected officials and information for a long time. And so my first question would be if there is an organization that you trust who does great civic engagement work in the community, I would look and see if they have done research, because usually they do. And they probably do research based off of your values. So that's one, is like, if you have an organization that would be great. Two, you should be able to, you should be able to look up your politicians as well. So again, I think for Arizona, and I think this is everywhere, your county recorders will actually have the elections information from the people who are running in your county. And so any government sites like that will also help. So your Secretary of State's office, your Maricopa County recorders, those people, those websites will have, okay, who's actually running and who are they? What are some things that they care about? Dun, dun, dun. And then is the address for mail-in ballots on the ballot? How do I find? Yes, the address should already be there for you. For that question, the question was, is the address for the mail-in ballots in the ballot? Yes, the address should already be there. Awesome. I see here in the comments, no, if you have to go, thank you so much for joining. I'll still be taking questions, but for the people who have to leave at this moment, thank you so much. It was an honor to be able to train you today, to be able to connect with you. Again, this is my contact information. If you did want to connect via Twitter, via Instagram, hit me up. We'd love to engage with you all. I'll be staying on for these last 10 minutes. If you want to do a debrief and tell me what your biggest takeaway was, I would appreciate that too. What is your biggest takeaway from this training? And then again, I'll still be taking questions for the next 9 minutes. So just let me know. I see some questions still coming in. If you have a takeaway, please let me know. I want to know your thoughts. Thank you all. You know both more and less. Awesome. You know what you know now. Yes, roommate filling out mail-in ballot. Yes, Sophia, you have the power. Don't let anybody tell you different. I'm here for it. How to encourage people to vote was my biggest takeaway. Awesome. Thank you, Jamie. The do's and don'ts. Yes, we want to make sure we're considerate when we're talking to our folks. Y'all are so amazing. Y'all are so, so amazing. I see some folks are hopping off. So again, if you do want to connect with me at another time, this is the way you can get a hold of me. This is how we engage further. Y'all are amazing, beautiful humans who have the power to change the world. And I'll be here witnessing every piece of it. Oh, thanks, y'all. I feel accomplished. Can't wait to vote for the first time voters. Yay. Love to see it. All right. I have a question here. What if I don't like any of the candidates? That's real. That is real. And that is okay. That is valid too. I want to acknowledge that and affirm that that is okay. Something that keeps me showing up when I think about maybe feeling negative about voting because of who's running, I maybe think about the people who don't have the opportunity to vote. So our undocumented folks, our folks who will be impacted maybe in different ways. And I try to make sure that I make my voice heard for them. And I check my privilege sometimes and know that voting is a part of the process. Again, it's only one part of the process. There are many different ways that we make change and move forward as a country. But when I'm thinking about my apathy towards voting, I try to remind myself that, again, if the candidates can't bring me to vote, maybe there's an initiative that's on the ballot that will, right? Maybe there's an issue that's on the ballot that can move me to get there, at least for the first step. Making a plan. I was just gonna walk in with my citizenship papers. Yes, make that plan, Daniel. I'm here for it. I see having a personal voting plan was the biggest takeaway. Thank you all so much for your energy. How do you figure out what propositions even mean? I got that big packet and I don't understand some of the jargon. I feel you. I am like that sometimes too. I think the best way, honestly, if you look up whatever prop that is, a lot of the times online you can find real people who have testimonials on why they are supporting it or not supporting it. So sometimes they have that in the packet that they send, but again, it may be from people who are maybe a little disconnected. So they're using words that regular schmegular people don't understand. But for example, for Prop 208 here in Arizona, if you look that one up, because it's about education, you actually see different takes on it, whether it's like from a teacher, a business person, whatever the case may be. And so I think simply Googling it and looking for those different keywords will help. Also, social media is so good now too. You can probably look up the hashtag of whatever prop that is, and the people who are working for or against it will probably have things up in more simpler terms. So that should help. Let's see. I think you answered this, but let's say I'm in AZ, but I'm registered in Minnesota. Can I still vote in AZ? So you have to vote in the state that you are registered in. So if you're in AZ and you moved here and like you're a resident here now, then you want to register before October 5th and vote here in Arizona. But if you're just like, you know what, I came out here to be with a friend during the pandemic and I'm not staying here, this isn't my home, then I would still vote in Minnesota. And then, if the whole country all voted for one of the presidential candidates, could the Electoral College still overrule the popular vote? If the whole country all voted for one presidential candidate, could the Electoral College still overrule the popular vote? Oh, you're saying like if, I'm a little confused on that question, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a tad confused. So, Lucas, I don't know if you want to explain a little more. I'm not sure about that.
Shelley?
Yes.
I think what the question is if the popular vote is overwhelmingly for one candidate, let's say the popular vote's overwhelmingly for Biden, and could Trump still win the Electoral College?
Oh, I see. Thank you for that.
For example, and so, do you want to share a thought about that, or?
Did you have something? It looked like you had something.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the answer to that is that it's technically possible that Trump could win the Electoral College, but it's highly unlikely. If the country's overwhelmingly voting for Biden, then it's very likely in the swing states, we're going to win those swing states as well. And, you know, Shelley, you said this, but it's, you know, the presidential election's critical, but there are also races up and down the ballot that are critical this time. So.
Yeah.
So even if your vote doesn't matter in one of the swing states, there's a lot of your vote really, you know, your vote matters. So.
Absolutely. Lucas, I hope that answers your question. We finished right on time. Thank you all so much. Richard, I don't know if you have any final words.
My final words are just, I want to just echo these comments. I'm getting, there are words in the comment box to describe you like amazing, terrific, super informative, love your energy. I loved your energy. I thought you were super helpful and informative too. And I really appreciate it. I think we all really appreciate the work you're doing. And I just want to, you know, as loudly as I can, reinforce everything you said today about voting, about overcoming the barriers to voting, about staying in the fray. And I just want to thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for putting this on, and thank you everyone who joined. Y'all are amazing.
All right. Take care, everybody. Well.
Bye.